I don't know if that made any sense, but hi everyone, how are you? I hope you're doing well. So today I'm gonna talk about the books I read in July. Originally, I thought I would do a whole summer wrap-up video, so for both July and August, but I actually read 6 books in July, and I will probably read even more in August, and I thought that video would just be way too long, and so I'm gonna do 2 shorter videos instead. So let's get into it. So the first book that I read, well, actually not read, but finished in July, is Girl, Woman, Other. Okay, this book, I had high expectations of this book and I was not disappointed. It delivered everything and even more than I expected it to. It was so good. I loved it. I just loved it, honestly. But before we get into all the things that I loved about it, I just want to say if you're planning on reading this book, good for you, first of all, but also really read it like continuously. And what I mean by that is I always read more books at once, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, sometimes even more. And it really wasn't a good idea to do that for this book. I think it would have been so much better to read it like continuously in a week or something, just read this one book and focus on this one book, because all the characters are sort of like connected to each other. Well, not all of them, but like, there are connections between the characters, and I just feel like my reading experience would have been so much better if I read it like continuously and focused on it instead of reading a bit and then reading other books. I'm just saying, don't read it over the course of a whole month or even 2 months. I think it took me almost 2 months to read this book, which is ridiculous. It's not that long. And yeah, so just don't repeat my mistakes, basically. But anyway, let's get to the things I enjoyed. So, first of all, the characters. In a book like this, that relies heavily on the characters, not the plot, it's obviously very important to have characters that are well done, well written. And oh my gosh, I loved these characters. And by that I mean I loved how they were done. I didn't necessarily love all of them as people, but I really enjoyed the way they were written, and they actually felt like real life people, which, it's what you want in a book. And yeah, that was just an amazing job. So, the next thing that I really enjoyed and found super interesting and also pretty important was the conversation about race, and more importantly, how race and racism impacted the characters differently depending on in which time they lived. It was so interesting to see how their struggles kind of changed but also kind of stayed the same, which is so sad. And also for a person who's from a country with a very, very different history from Great Britain or the USA, it was also just really interesting for me to see, like, how, I don't know how to explain it, but it was just interesting to see the history. The next thing I really enjoyed was how this book dealt with, well, not dealt with, but how this book portrayed feminism, because every character had a different relationship to feminism and they had different opinions, and it was just so cool to see how different people see feminism differently, and also how different generations see differently. And I don't know, I just really like the aspect of that aspect of this book. So the next book I want to talk about is Call Me by Your Name. Now, okay, I have complicated feelings when it comes to this book because, okay, so first of all, this was a reread. The first time I read it, I was 16 or 17, I'm not sure. And the first time I read it, I loved it. I could relate to so many things. It was just this, I feel like I read it at the perfect time, sort of, for me to, I don't know, relate to some of the things that Elio felt in terms of like coming of age and just growing up and trying to figure out your place in life and stuff like that. And so I really loved the book. And at the time, I also kind of liked the relationship, which, spoiler alert, kind of changed. But we're gonna get to that later. So yeah, I just loved it, and I kept the book, and I decided to read it every summer because I also loved the summer vibes. And well, I haven't read it every summer since then. I only read it this summer, so this was my second time reading it. And I was, like, on one hand, I was excited to read it because I remembered how much I liked it. But since then, I've also read some conversations about the book, and I realized it's not as ideal as it may have seemed way back then. So yeah, when I first read it at 16, I loved it. And now I wanted to reread it to see what I'm gonna think about it now, because it's quite a controversial book, as you might know. So, okay, I'm gonna start with the things that haven't really changed. I still love the summer vibes. It's like, that's immaculate, honestly. It just transports you to Italy in summer, and it's just, I love that. I also still enjoyed the writing because that was also one of the things that I absolutely loved when I read it the first time. However, I didn't enjoy it at all times, especially when it comes to the steamy scenes. I did not enjoy the writing there. Some of it was just meh, and some of it was literally gross. I did not enjoy that. But overall, I can say I enjoyed the writing. And even though I'm not 17 anymore, I still could feel the coming of age sort of, I don't know, nostalgia and just the vibes. And I still appreciated that because I still could relate to Elio in some ways. However, I could not relate to his feelings about Oliver and the whole relationship, thank God, because that relationship wasn't great. And okay, I have to say something before I delve into that. I don't see this book as a romance novel. And I know that it's advertised as a romance novel, and a lot of people talk about it as a romance novel, which is fair because it does revolve around romance. But for me, it was really more about a coming of age, like, summer story. It was never about, like, oh my gosh, I really ship these two characters, I want them to stay together forever. It was never really about that. Even back then, when I actually liked them together, I still liked the ending because it just made sense. Also, this review might contain some spoilers. I'm sorry about that, but I don't think I can do it without them properly, so feel free to skip to the next book if you don't want anything spoiled. Right, now let's get to the relationship. So, like I said, I don't see it as a romance novel, which means basically that I don't need the relationship to be good, and I don't need, like, I don't need to ship them in order to enjoy this book. And I think that's why I actually enjoyed this book, because I really didn't ship them, and I like, there were so many issues with the relationship, but since it wasn't about that for me, I didn't really care, if that makes any sense. However, I still want to talk about it here because I feel like it is kind of important to talk about it. What struck me was that Elio was so obsessed with Oliver. Like, in the first half, he was like, I would do anything for him. And okay, I know that when you're in love, it can feel like that. And okay, yeah, it's fine. But here, it wasn't love, it was obsession. And that's not it. Also, they were both kind of shitty to each other. I know that for most people, Oliver is like the villain because he's older and he should know better, which he should, yeah, like, that's true. But honestly, Elio was no saint. Like, they were both kind of shitty to each other, and just, yeah, like, it's a good thing they didn't end up together, because no. So yeah, I didn't like the relationship, but I did enjoy reading the book. But I definitely see why so many people hate it and have issues with it, because yeah. So the next book I want to talk about is The Deep. So I don't really have that much to say about this book except that I enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend it because the idea behind it is just so good. And yeah, like go for it, honestly. If you're gonna read it, I really recommend the audiobook because it's narrated by David Dix and it's just his voice. It was so good. It was really good. So the next book I want to talk about is a graphic novel called Parole de Nerf. Sorry for that pronunciation if it was bad. I hope it was okay. This book, this graphic novel, is originally in French. I read it in Czech, and I also believe it has been translated to German. I don't think it's available in English, which is a shame because it was great, and it was honestly art. It was honestly eye-opening because I didn't know much about Morocco, and so what is this book even about, right? Sorry, I didn't include a synopsis because I didn't find an English synopsis, so I'm just gonna quickly tell you. It basically is about how is sexuality viewed in Morocco, especially women's sexuality, and just how society views women and their freedom in general. It is written by a journalist who talks to different women about their lives and like their love life as well. And what was really interesting, like what caught me like right at the beginning, was that in Morocco, women seems to be divided into two categories based on whether they are virgins or not. So if you are a virgin, you're the like wifey material, and if you're not, you're the girlfriend material in terms of like people, well, men date you, but they wouldn't marry you because you're not a virgin. But they will happily have sex with you, of course, but they will not marry you because you're not like pure. I didn't know anything about Morocco before reading this book. So yeah, like I said, it was pretty eye-opening and really, really interesting. So if you're able to get this graphic novel, I would highly recommend it. So the last two books I want to talk about are actually two romances. And before I start talking about both of them, I just want to say I started reading romances this year, basically. Like before that, I only read books with more to them than the romance part. So I would read fantasy with a romance in it, but I also needed the fantasy. Like I would never, well, almost never read a book with solid a romance like line, because I just thought it would be too boring to just focus on the romance, right? Well, wrong. I mean, I was wrong. I was so wrong. And now I'm catching up, it seems. So yeah, anyway, the first book out of the two I want to talk about is A Duke by Default, which is the second book in the Reluctant Royals series by Alyssa Cole. Um, okay, so I I really liked the first book in this series, and I feel like I read. I mean, okay, I like this one as well, but I feel like maybe I liked the first a bit more, bit more. But I still like this one as well. It was fun. It was steamy, and I loved the characters, especially Portia. I loved Portia. Honestly, I would love to meet her. I know it's not possible to meet fictional characters, but I would still love to meet Portia because she's a badass and she was great. And Taff, like the main love interest, as well, he was also, I mean, he did a few things I was like meh about, but overall he was great as well. And I really, really enjoyed listening to this book. One thing I really want to point out that I feel like this author generally tries to put something more in her books than just romance and steam, and I really appreciate it. Like for example, in this book, Portia, this is a mild spoiler, but she dealt with ADHD, or rather, she dealt with trying to figure out if she might have ADHD and if that's the reason why some things work in her life the way they do. And okay, I don't have ADHD, I don't know much about ADHD, so I can't judge the accuracy of that representation. However, I really appreciated that the author even like included it, because she could have just, make it a, I don't want to be mean, but like dump romance and be done with it. And so I appreciate that she did a bit more than that. And I'm actually currently listening to the third book in the series, and she did it again. I'm not gonna say like with what, but it's again not just a damp romance, and I love that. So yeah. What I didn't love as much was the ending. Or I mean, I did like the ending, but I didn't like how quick it was, because the problems were just solved way too quickly. And also, I would appreciate to see the relationship for a bit longer. I would appreciate to see them actually together, not just getting together. So yeah, but to be fair, this couple is in the next book in the series and also in the like novellas. So I guess you can see how the relationship like progressed, but still. The last book I want to talk about is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. If you follow anyone who talks about books on social media, I bet you've heard about this book or about the series, because it has been everywhere, literally everywhere, and everyone hyped it up so much. And when I finally got to it, I was actually kind of disappointed. Like in the beginning, I didn't really love it, to be honest. I don't know why. Like, but the first like third of the book was just kind of meh. Like, I didn't really vibe with it. I think the main reason was the narrator, because I listened to this as an audiobook and I just didn't like the narrator. This is a personal thing. I'm not saying the narrator is bad, I'm just saying it really didn't work for me. The way she differentiated between characters, like she did different voices, I really didn't like the way she did that. I just didn't like it, and so it took quite a while for me to get used to it. But when I did, it got so much better. So maybe my dislike of the book was like at the beginning was just because of the narrator. I don't know, it's possible. However, the important thing is that it got better, like the book got so much better, and I really loved it at the end. Like the end was so sweet and just I just really liked it. I mean, it's not perfect. I wouldn't give it 5 stars, honestly, but it was nice. It was just enjoyable. And if you're looking for a fun and steamy romance, I would recommend this. And I would also recommend A Duke by Default. So yeah, both of the romances that I read were pretty good. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I tried to record this quite quickly because I don't have that much time. So I hope I wasn't rambling too much. And yeah, but if anything I said isn't clear, feel free to ask. I don't mind clarifying anything. As you could see, July was a pretty good reading month for me. I enjoyed all of the books, even though some of them were not perfect, but they were still great. And I don't know why. Maybe I'm just enjoying reading more in general this year, but I feel like this year so far has been a great reading year. Like, I can't remember any book that I would like hate. And I don't know, maybe I'm less critical than I used to be, or maybe I'm just picking better books. Who knows? But I love it. So yeah, I hope the second half of 2021 is gonna be just as good. I would love to know what you're reading or what you read in July or anything. You know, if you want to leave a book related comment, just feel free to. I love talking about books, if you can't tell. So yeah. I hope you have a good day and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!